All right. So it says we're live. I'm going to find the link on YouTube and post it in the Discord.
I like it. I can take the reins while you're doing that because there's no way I can do two things at once. Hello, everybody, if anybody is out there. My name is Andy Smith. This is not my channel. This is Chris Bookish Cauldron's channel.
And I'm being a very bad host by not introducing him.
One of my favorite channels on YouTube. So I'm very happy to be here. We are, of course, talking Scala Along 2021, the best thing to come out of 2021 since the COVID vaccine. I don't know.
Arguably better.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Shooting high. My co-host, you might know him. You're on his channel. His name is Chris. I'm running out of things to say.
Okay. So we are doing our... All right. So we are doing our first live show for #ScalaAlong, which is Luck in the Shadows. So Andy was very enthusiastic about this, and I was very excited to have Andy join me to have our conversations. See, this is what happens when you're live. You can't edit that out.
That's true.
And so, I thought this would be really fun to have you along because you're a big fantasy reader, but you've not read these. So it'll be fun to have a conversation between like rereaders and readers. And so I guess the first thing maybe to get out of the way is that you just finished this book last night, correct?
Actually, today. I thought I was doing last night, and I thought like the last part was, you know how there's like excerpts of next books, like at the end of books.
Mm-hmm.
I actually thought that I'd done that, and then today I just went back to like go over some stuff, and I was like, oh no, this is an actual chapter. I think it's called like Scabs or something like that, or Scars.
Let's see.
Scars would make more sense. It's basically just like them looking over Sarah Gill's like chest one more time, and that weird vision. But I thought that was just like a excerpt from the next book. So anyway, all that to say is I finished it today, so I'm very fresh off of this book.
So how did you feel about it in terms of expectations versus reality? What were you expecting with this one, and did you feel like you got it?
Yeah, I'll probably step back because you mentioned I was really excited about this, and I am for a couple of reasons.
Okay.
I remember hearing about it when you had read, what is it? It's like the Bone Doll's Daughter. It's some weird.
The Bone Doll's Twin.
There we go. Yeah. And that's the prequel series. Yeah. You were talking about it I don't know if it was a couple of years ago or whatever, but I watched that video and I was like, fascinating. I haven't heard of like this world at all. And then when you brought up the Scala Along, I was like, this sounds perfect for a couple of reasons. One is, like you, I've been trying to purposefully read more female authors in the fantasy genre because I've noticed that my diet is just really male heavy that I've been reading. So there's a check mark there. And I loved that, like Malazan, I'm just going to give another shout out to Malazan. It's a series that's written primarily in the 90s before like LGBTQ rights was, for lack of a better term, like mainstream. That's not a good way of saying it, but where it was a little bit more courageous, unfortunately, to have those kind of characters. And that was a central part of this story. So for both of those reasons, I got super pumped about it. And a lot of the series I've been reading are, big chunker, 800 to 1,000 page, A Song of Ice and Fire type books. And so I was excited that these are books that they're not nothing, but they're not chonkers. And so coming into it, I was really just looking for like a really good, interesting read. And I was interested in those elements that I mentioned beforehand. And then on top of that, you mentioned in your like introduction that you love these characters. And so in all of those ways, my expectations were met. Like Alec and Sarah Gill, and even Nisander and Micum.
I say Micum.
Okay. It's funny. This is another thing about making YouTube videos. I never say things in my head while I'm reading them. So it's not until I have to make my review that I actually have to say names out loud.
Well, fans of the series have corrected me over the years for saying Sarah Jill's name wrong, and I've not listened to the audiobook, so I really don't know how to say it. I think it's supposed to be a hard G, but I really don't know.
Oh, so Sarah Jill is how you say it?
I think it's supposed to be, I say Sarah Jill.
Okay. I say kind of a deep, in my head, it's like a deep G, like Sarah Gill.
Yeah.
But anyway, but yeah, all those characters I just loved. And like, it's funny because all of those characters are like if I describe them to you, they sound very like bland, you know, the spy guy, the young kid who's you know catches on well with a mysterious past, and like the powerful wizard. But like they're all just they're painted with just enough detail to be like, in my opinion, like super unique and super fun, and like all their relationships therein I really enjoyed.
Yeah. And I think the strength of this series, because I think you're right. I think that on the surface, the characters can feel bland, like they're just genuinely, most of them, quite nice people.
Yeah.
But there's a very warm characterization that takes place here. Like you feel very intimate with them. You really feel like you know them very well. And they definitely, each of them definitely has like issues in their past, you know what I'm trying to say? That definitely, not so much in this book, but that definitely get explored. I mean, I think there's certain hints in this book in particular about Sergil, as about his past and stuff. So yeah, I definitely agree with everything you said. I think that the characterization really holds up on a reread. And I just love more the biggest strength of the series is the characters, but I also really like the world. I like the fact that the world embraces a lot of very like classical tropes in the fantasy genre. Like it's definitely not out there to like really subvert and present a super different kind of world, but at the same time, there's a lot of very different aspects of the world in terms of like queer world building. So there's especially like the Street of Lights, which is one of my favorite elements of the book, which is this street where there are prostitution going on. I should say sex work, probably the better word for it.
Yeah.
And the each of the lights outside of the brothels indicate the type of sex worker you'll find: men seeking men, women seeking women, that type of thing. And it's all presented in this way that's almost like regulated, accepted, and very like sex positive, which is very different, I think, from other books in the genre at the time, which presented sex workers a certain kind of way in the narrative, and in just kind of one aspect, which I always like, and those aspects do come up later on in the books as well.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, you started saying that. I was going to ask because I thought we were going to get a scene where Sarah Jill takes Alec like down there and sort of like pushes him into a brothel because, you know, Alec is so like shy. And they even allude that he should have some time with the Way of Lights. And so I thought that was where we were going to get like introduced to that. Maybe that happens later, but for the moment, it was just kind of like passed off, but in a very like unjudgmental way, which, like you said, was very cool. In fact, the whole world is very sex positive. Like Alexander's relationship with whatever that female sorceress that I'm sure is going to be a bad person at some point is there. But and like even how Micah and Sarah Jill had some kind of relationship beforehand, but they're still friends, which is fine. And like his wife is fine. Like there's just like, it's a very sex positive world. But what I like about Lynn Llewellyn is none of this stuff does she like hammer on your head. Like it's not like I don't like the word virtue signaling because that, you know, whatever. But like it's the narrative is not like that in any sense. It's just like that's how the world is. And I wish our world was a little bit more like that.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think especially for writing this in the 90s, I think this was published in like 1997 or 1998. Those elements were just very rare in fantasy. I mean, they're still kind of rare in fantasy. So yeah, I really loved all those aspects of it. I will say, I think on a reread, the plotting was a little bit rougher for me than it was.
There, I was going to say it's good that there's all this other good stuff because the plotting itself, I think, is very uneven.
And I think so this was her debut novel. And so I read this very quickly when I first read it, which I think this book benefits from reading it quickly. Because I don't think when you read it quickly, you kind of, or maybe other people would disagree and they read it quickly and did notice this. But when I read it really quickly the first time, I did not notice how many like kind of like little side missions there were. You know, a little bit of spying here, a little bit of spying there, and then the big bad thing was mentioned at the beginning kind of like becomes super important later on and towards the end of the book, and that's kind of where the climax is kind of like built, right? I don't think I noticed that as much on the first reading because I was reading it very quickly. And this time around, I really took my time with it to kind of savor being with the characters again. And you do notice those awkward plotting issues more and more as the slower you read it, I think. But it's also a debut novel, and I think the series gets better as far as that is concerned as it goes along. In particular, I think the second book is much more focused. And I know that somebody already finished the second book and posted it in the Discord that they found it a lot better as far as the plotting was concerned. So, yeah. That's
in a like a positive way of twisting that. I don't think this was done on purpose, but it kind of felt like you were Alec the whole time, just like swept up in this and like not understanding anything. But okay, I guess we're going to the port city. Oh, we got this marble.
yes.
I guess we're going somewhere else. And then that's just how the whole second half. Once you, so obviously they're fleeing for the first whatever 30%. I don't know the exact breakdowns. Then they get to the city and it's kind of like this whole new world. You meet new people, very fun. Then the biggest part, as you said, is like that next, 35% where they're like the mystery is unraveling. And the mystery ends up just being like, as you say, like a bunch of little plots that like happen. And sometimes some are interesting, some are not, some random things. Oh, and there's a landslide happening. Like, it's just like a lot. And then the end comes really fast. Like the falling action is so abrupt.
Yes.
Because of that.
And in fact, the book kind of ends on this like to be continued type of thing, right? Which feels kind of cheesy when you read it. I believe that Lynn Llewellyn actually submitted the first two books to be one whole novel, like the whole thing, this kind of like gigantic book. And her publisher was like, no. They were like, we refuse. You got to split it up. So I think that could also be a source of some of the kind of awkward parsing out of the plot. But that definitely stood out to me a lot more in the second reading than it did the first time around, which is like fine. I mean, if you notice criticisms the second time around, I think that's actually a good thing.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get your opinion on the Wizarding School, which is basically one of my favorite aspects of the book, largely because I like the atmosphere of the place. There is something about it that feels very like Hogwarts-esque, right? I mean, obviously this was written before then, but it gives me those same types of cozy vibes. And there's very like classical elements of fantasy here. I mean, there's even centaurs and stuff like that, which I think sometimes like took some people kind of out of the story a little bit, seeing those like very classical elements presented in a very unironic way.
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the things to talk about the like quick plotting, I think one of the things that hurts the book is like I didn't feel like I ever had enough time to like be in that place to really understand it. Like I wonder how much of that feeling you have is because you've read the whole thing. Because I have a positive feeling of it. The what's it called? The third something or other.
The third Oreska house or Riska. I'm not really sure.
Like there's elements of it that I love. When we were there, I really liked it. I liked like the little seeing stone or whatever it is that like guided him around.
Yes.
I was sad that I thought that was going to come back more, even just like as like a little device that was, sometimes he used, but it was kind of like used once for walks around the garden. Like I loved the idea of the ring park that like you can just like go around. So like there's a ton of fun things that even now as I'm thinking about it, I'm like, oh yeah, that was really fun. Oh yeah, that was really fun. The beautiful tapestry that has like magic woven into it. Like
yes.
All of it is so cool. I just wish that we had a little more time to sit there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, I think about like Harry Potter, for example. My favorite parts of Harry Potter are probably different than a lot of people's. Like, I love the scenes when they're just like in the common room doing homework, right? Like those are definitely my favorite types of like scenes where it's just a lot of like atmosphere and vibes. And you're right, we don't get a ton of that in this book.
First, just to double down on that, like the first three episodes, the first three books of Harry Potter, like are basically like slowly enveloping Hogwarts to you. Like the big plot doesn't really develop until Voldemort, spoiler alert, comes back in the fourth one in bodily form. But like the first book, like you're just, this world exists. And then the second one, you really learn more about Hogwarts and the history. And then the third one, you kind of Hogsmeade and sort of the larger, world, Azkaban, blah, blah. And then like the really strong plot elements come in. I think, I mean, obviously it's a middle grade series, so it's slightly different, but like Lynn Llewellyn is just doing a lot of heavy lifting in this, whatever it was, 470 page book. Which didn't allow me to like absorb that as much or make like that place be a place as much to me. But as I said, I mean, like the most important thing is that I really like the characters, and I was fine like just kind of flying around with them.
Mhm.
Like it didn't. Well, maybe it detracted a little bit, but like not incredibly so, because those characters, like you said, like you do bond with pretty quick.
Mhm. So, as far as the characters, how did you feel about Alec? I think one of the things I really appreciated on the reread about Alec was the competence level of Alec. I really appreciate the fact that Alec is, he's taken on as this apprentice. And I think that, we've seen this kind of played out in a lot of fantasy books.
Yeah.
Someone taking on as the apprentice, they learn very, very quickly. But I like the fact that Alec brings his own skill to the gang. And in particular, like when they're fleeing that first mission and trying to get to Scala, um, he kills off all those people using his bow, and
Mhm.
clearly saved their lives, right? So he's bringing his own like kind of skills to the team, which I really appreciated, because I think that it would have been a very frustrating read had we been given this kind of like ignorant apprentice that just learns incredibly quickly.
Well, yeah, and that's kind of like to compare to another series, like that's pretty much how the Two Rivers people are in the first couple Wheel of Times.
Yeah.
Like they have some moments, but mostly they're like liabilities to Moraine and Land.
Yeah.
Like especially in Eye of the World, excuse me, but and Great Hunt. Anyway, but in this book, yeah, I liked that Alec was like not just like the dumb idiot, and in fact, there's this huge subversion in that first half where normally, it's like the Gandalf or the whoever, the leader, the smarter person will like lead the other people out of danger, whereas Sergil like basically is incapacitated for most of the end.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
like and Alec gets a chance not only to be very competent, and like it's clear, like that makes it clear why he gains trust so easily with someone like Nasander, or like that they like him, is because he's shown this great ability, but also loyalty. But as I was going to say, it shows Alex, I think, primary quality, which is like this loyalty to his like friends,
Mhm.
and people, like this sense of, I don't know what you want to call it, like friendly duty. That's kind of a weird way of
Mhm.
saying that. But like, so, and I wonder if, because I was trying to think of like what is different about this kind of like, not Mary Sue, but you know what I mean? Like this kind of like character who's very good at everything, but also is shy. But I think it is that he has that like loyalty to him, and he also does make mistakes. I don't know. I'm kind of rambling now, but I
No,
like
I
him a lot.
I completely agree. And I think that I've heard some people say that like Alec's superpower is that he's incredibly nice. Like he is somebody who gains people's trust very quickly. He is somebody who, if you take him to any social situation, he can play the part well and adapt very well, which I really appreciate. And I think part of that is in some cases, I think brought upon by his like upbringing, this very isolated
Mhm.
upbringing, um, with his father in the woods. So yeah, there's that. Now I have a question. There's obviously something about Alec that Sarah Joel notices that he's not revealing to Alec yet.
Oh yeah,
As
that he's Aaron Faye. I
okay,
mean, I feel like that was pretty thick. I
okay,
don't think that was supposed to be too secretive.
you're almost right, is what I'm saying.
Ooh, okay, that's good. Yeah, I think the two things that really gave it away is, yeah, the one conversation where Sanders like, "Have you told him yet?" And he's like,
Mm-hmm.
Sarah Jill's like, "No," and then it cuts off, I think, the end of the chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And so right there, I was like, okay, he's either like related to the Queen or something, like
Mm-hmm.
he's hidden royalty, or he's Aaron Faye. And then we get confirmed that Sarah Gill is Aaron Faye, which we already kind of suspected. And then at the end, when he says, "I'll be old and gray by the time you," whatever. He's the conversation between him, Sarah Gill, and Alec. And Alec is like, "Oh, I'll be old and gray by the time you are selling something or whatever." And he's like, "I very much doubt it," or something like that.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, so he's got some Aaron Faye in him.
Okay.
That's my prediction, I guess. I don't know for sure.
Yeah, I was just curious if you had made the prediction yet. Yeah, that all gets spelled out
Yeah.
in
So actually,
explicit detail as the series goes on.
1 second here.
You're good. While Andy is muted, I am just going to remind everyone that we already have the channels set up in the Discord for the next book, which is Stalking Darkness. So, yeah, those are all ready for discussion. Yeah. Here we go.
I'm back.
All right. Everything okay?
Sorry for the break. So what everyone doesn't know is I am secretly at work. Not secretly, but I'm at work right now. So every once in a while, I'll have to jump up and maybe help somebody because we have a rental at the theater tonight. But anyway, sorry. Did I jump in on something?
No. I can't remember where we were though.
Alex, you were probably being very nice. You asked about Aaron Faye. Oh, I can tell you some other predictions that I have, if that would be interesting to you.
Yes.
I know this is hard for you because you can't say anything.
Yes, I have to sit here kind of in seething silence.
Yeah. I think The Apprentice, what's his name? The bald one who Sarah Gill changes body.
Oh, I know who you're talking about, but it still slipped my mind now that you said that.
Anyway, that hurts my prediction maybe, but my prediction is he is the big bad. I think he is behind the shadows, like the Larens or whoever who are trying to replace the throne. Either them or he's working with like the northern city that's trying to actually take over Scala. So that's my prediction there.
Okay.
And it might not happen for a while, like a couple books down, but that's one prediction. I definitely think the lady, the sexy lady, is also going to play a bad part. I don't know if she's going to be actually a villain or like accidentally a villain, but it seems like she's there to mess something up at some point for Miss Sander.
Okay.
And I'm very interested as far as like shipping Alec. I feel like there's a lot of ships. Like obviously Sarah Gill seems to be like the one true pair of this whole thing. It seems. But he like has chemistry with everyone, which is why it's so hard to know. Because like him and Becca have some great chemistry. Like I want to see that. What's the even like the scenes with like the silly like maid have some.
Oh yeah, I felt so bad for her.
Have some chemistry to him, and like so Alec is just like a walking ball of chemistry, and so I don't know who to like cheer for. Actually, with the man, the like manservant that Lysander has, Wessex.
Yes.
Is that the boy? Like even when they have like some playful banter because they don't like the apprentice, like, it's like, oh, maybe this is something. So I just that's kind of how I found myself reading the whole time. I was like, oh, Alex can fall in love with them. Oh, Alex can fall in love with them. Oh. So I don't know where that's gonna go, except I think Sarah Gill is like the ultimate ending. But
yeah.
I also don't know if that's going to be exclusive because of this world and how it works. I don't know. So that's a tough one.
I think you're making solid predictions.
Okay.
That's all I'll say. You're making good predictions.
The other prediction, sorry, the one last one I have is Becca, I think, is going to be a much larger character because she seemed too like solid, and there was already some references that Lysander wanted her as a watcher. So I think she'll definitely like come more into the forefront in later books.
Yeah. There are some amazing women warriors in this world, which is one of my favorite elements of the book. Most of the like army generals are women. Most of the people who are in power in this world are women. And there's some really awesome characters in this, as far as that's concerned. Becca definitely being one of them. I was wondering how you felt also about like their little game, kind of playing these like. Gentleman spies, right? Because Sarah Jill actually has this kind of alternative identity in the world, which he plays up this almost like Scarlet Pimpernel like character amongst the noblemen. I love that element, and I love when they kind of throw these parties at this house and like Alec's position, and it's one of my favorite elements in the series. And they also have a business that they run. They own a bar. They've got a lot of irons in the fire.
Yeah, and it's like steadily revealed to you. It's like, oh, he's got this in, and he's Lord Sarah Jill, and then it's like, yeah, now this huge house, and you know, Alec being like all awkward, being like the secondary master of the house. Sarah Jill gets arrested.
I felt so bad for Alec when he got set up to rob Sergil's house
Oh,
as a test.
This is interesting because it was obviously a big deal for Alec because he gets mad at it and he brings it up several times for Sergio. To me, it was like, I mean, like, it's better than him sending you into like a dangerous area. I don't know. For me, it was not as big a deal as it was for Alec in the story. So it's interesting that it hit you that hard as well.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite parts because I think Alec feels infantilized.
Okay. I guess that makes
and
sense.
then set up to feel all this danger and stuff like that. To find out that really the people that you're supposed to be trusting were pulling the kind of strings behind you. I mean, it reminded me a little bit of in the Farseer trilogy, the knife incident with Chade and Shrewd.
Oh,
Right. I mean, obviously, that's like way more
I
emotional,
was
right?
going to say that's so much more psychological.
Yeah, that was way more psychological. But I think this is like a similar element going on for Alec. So yeah, what was I going to say? As far as that's concerned, I had a thought and it's completely escaping me. Okay, so there's a big plot element in this book. Okay, this is one part that a little criticism because this is something I've tried to understand both times I've read this series now. Is a humongous part of this book is trying to prove Sergil's innocence because he's been framed for treason against the queen. And even in this book and in later books, it's talked about even more that there are such things as truth wizards who can reveal whether or not someone is telling the truth.
Yeah.
Why do they not just put him to the question with the truth wizard? Like, I have read it. Like, I do not understand if that is just a plot hole or if that got explained or if anyone else picked up on that, but it drove me insane both times I've read it now.
Yeah, that's true. And the like truth wizard thing is very murky because apparently it doesn't work with torture, but like it works perfectly when they're under distress. That's a good point. Someone in the comments said that Sergil is somehow immune to magic.
That is true, but I always thought that he just couldn't wield it himself. I didn't know that he couldn't be worked on against him, right? Because I mean, like the dark.
Some wards, doesn't he say that some wards don't work against him at some point?
Yeah, it's true. But I mean, the dark magic works against him because that the thing almost kills him.
But they do say anyone else would have been dead by now. So there is an illusion that I don't know if that's because he's Aaron Faye, but there's a reference to that somewhere.
Maybe that is the reason. Thank you, Overdose Shill Pill. If that is the reason you save me from frustration.
That's a great name. Although I will bring back your frustration because we find out that there was another lord who was put to death.
Yes.
Even though he was innocent, why couldn't they use a truth wizard with him to say like, hey man?
Well, I think because with him, he had confessed.
Which, by the way, do we ever learn why he confessed to something he didn't do?
Yes.
Is it later though?
Huh?
Is it later though? Because I don't remember.
No, I remember that we got the reason. It was that he was trying to protect somebody, I thought.
Because that's the guy who killed himself was trying to.
Oh, maybe that's right. That is another good point. Why are these truth wizards not being used? If I had a truth wizard, I'd be using the truth wizard.
A lot more truth wizards. That's what we want. More truth wizards.
More truth wizards. The magic is definitely okay. So these first 3 books, the magic is very like incantation based, and it's very loosey goosey. Like there's not a lot of rules. There are consequences, and I do think the consequences do get talked about. And I do like to learn about those. Yeah. But like the actual like rules of the magic feel very loosey-goosey, fly by the seat of your pants. Magic definitely gets used in a lot of very convenient ways. That never really bothers me that much when I'm reading the series, though. Like, I just find it fun and quirky and almost somewhat comical at times. Like, I love it when the little, like, talking orb comes around every time there's, like, a little message. So that never really bothers me too much. But I know it would bother some people who prefer the magic to be a bit more cold and logical. Mm-hmm. But the magic system later in the series gets a lot more developed, which I think there'll be a lot more interesting stuff to talk about. So if you're somebody who wants like weird, more interesting things going on with magic, the 4th and 5th books have some really intensely strange magic systems.
That's fun because it's definitely alluded to that this is kind of a weird and wacky thing. But I like that, like, it's never sat down and explained to us. Like we don't need to know the details, but there's enough to make it cool. I mean, we've talked about this privately before, but I don't even like the term hard magic system. And I appreciate you did not use that in that description, because I think it I don't know, biases the whole conversation towards actually just the term magic system. I think biases the whole system towards like, yeah, there's much, I'm glad you said cold magic.
Like, well, I think that it sets it up to be like, well, this magic is logical, therefore it's superior, and I don't think that's really true.
Well, I think it's great. Like, that's not magic then. That's just
I know. That's how I feel too.
I mean, I think there's a small but loud segment of us who think this way, but especially in, I'll say it. I think this is a safe way to say it, in the Brandon Sanderson like dominated fantasy genre of the early 21st century. Like, it is like, are you explaining the magic enough for me? And for me, that seems like a weird question to ask as a fantasy reader. So I like that in this, but also that I knew that there is like an internal logic. That's all I really have to have. Like, there's some internal logic, and the Sanders is very clear about that. Like, he even like there's the closest thing we have to describe it in this one is he says why Alec kept his mind when he became an owl, when he lost it when he turned into a buck. It's like very simple, and it was because Alec wanted to know, and so he just tells him, doesn't explain it super long. So there's obviously an internal logic, which I like. But yeah, it's not like, literally Kelsier is going to tell you about burning metals
for 10 pages.
You love.
Yeah, I love it. It's the best. Yeah, so I like the magic in there, and I like, I do wish, sometimes I wish we got more of the centaurs, which sounds weird, but I like the idea that like there's clearly some magical creatures in this world, but they're not really focused on. So I do kind of wish that we got a little bit more of that, just because I think it would add some more interesting things to the mix. But in general, I like that. I also like the fact that like Sarah Joel is allergic to magic. Somebody asked Lynn Llewellyn one time, like, why that was, like, was there some deeper reasoning behind that? And she was like, no, I just thought it was funny. Like, but it does add like a certain level of consequences, and the fact that you can't just like magic yourself out of every situation that they find themselves in, because it does have some pretty serious consequences for Sarah Joel.
Yeah, and that's so two things on that. One is one of the funniest parts in the book for me was when he switched bodies with the apprentice.
Oh yeah.
He tries to light the flame and it still like doesn't work. Like, that made me laugh a lot, especially because I forget what it was, but Nassander has some like witty banter with Sarah Gill after that. It's very funny. Secondly, speaking of magic, the one thing that I have trouble with is like how like wards and defenses work. With them being skullduggery people, because there's obviously like spells or whatever that can protect, but then also, like they can sneak into this very high, like the fortress of the Larens or whatever, like their highest thing, and there's no magical barriers, at least as far as I can understand. Which I guess, never mind, that's explained because they don't want to use magic because it's an Aaron Faye thing. Okay. I'm just talking it out here.
Well, I do like the one like kind of magic thing that Sarah Joel does have is this little dog trick.
Oh yes. You say 3 whatever and say
but I think it's just like make this motion with your hands, and it like
lighter man.
Yeah, like a hard rock kind of thing. And I do like those elements. So I think they've got like little luck magics and luck charms and stuff like that I find really fun throughout the series. Those definitely get played up quite a bit as the series goes on.
You said luck charm, and it just reminded me that one of the next books I get to read is Fool's Fate. I'm very excited.
Yes.
Sorry. You distracted me with a Hob reference accent.
But yeah, I think those are kind of like my main overall thoughts. Like the series isn't the deepest series in the world, right? Like, it's fairly pulpy. It's definitely like adventure, fun, sword and sorcery. But I just think it's done well. Like, I think the characters are done well. I think she improves a lot as the series goes on in terms of her writing quality and her plotting, and in particular, so books 1 through 3 were written first, and then she went back and wrote the prequel trilogy, and then she went back and wrote books 4, 5, 6, and 7. So the quality difference between books 3 and 4 is like pretty intense because like you could just tell she got so much like crafting under her belt with that prequel trilogy. That those are my favorite books in the whole series. Like they're just unbelievably good, like phenomenal.
What's the order you have us reading in this year?
We're doing all of the Alec and Sarah Jill books and then going back to the prequel trilogy.
All right.
It actually, I know she wrote them the other way, but it makes more sense to do it that way.
Okay.
And the prequel trilogy is her most well-regarded series. Like it won like I think a few awards. It was very well regarded in the fantasy community when it came out.
And from what I know from watching you, like that's when, because there's a reference in this book of when a king tried to take over.
Yes, that is
okay.
So you do get to see a little bit of some like monuments and things that Queen Tamir built during her time and how much she invested in and built up Scala. So that is addressed in this book. And it was really fun because, the first time I read the series, I didn't pay much attention to that. It was just kind of like, oh, here's some more facts about queens, because you do get a lot of facts about the queens in this book. Whereas reading it, knowing the history behind Tamir and watching her story unravel in that prequel trilogy, it kind of added a lot of heft to that. So you do get those kind of glimpses in there.
I probably would have missed it if I didn't know from, again, watching some of your that's where the prequel series goes. I was like, oh, that's fun. Just there.
Yeah, and like I said, I definitely think that the series really improves as it goes along. Because, like I said, I definitely noticed a lot of more rough around the edges elements to the plotting in this one. Even though I loved like the characters, just as much the first time as I did the first time.
Which I think like that papers over or smears over, whatever the metaphor.
Oh yeah,
so many wrongs if like it's characters you like.
Oh yeah, I can put up with so much awkward plotting if I like the characters.
I mean, listen, that's I mean, maybe you might not agree with this, but like that's what got me through Wheel of Time. Is that like I really wanted to see what happened with Rand, like a handful, like Egwene that I really like, and like that gets you through some weird sex politics and some weird, well, I guess gender politics, some weird. Boring politics. Anyway,
I'm
not talking about Wheel of Time, but like that can do a lot.
Oh yeah, definitely. And this one too, it's nice is that there's a lot of side characters and they all get fleshed out as the series goes along. Even like Lysander's apprentice and stuff like that. Like you learn a lot about these different people, and so the series goes along and really builds that way.
I will say, so the one, speaking of like saying this is kind of uneven, the one thing that I'm curious to ask you about that I did find somewhat distracting is the perspective switches in the book. Do you know what I mean by that? It's almost completely Alec and Sarah Gill, and then very abrupt, in my opinion, changes. I think the only other two is Mycom and Lysander. And I did not like, it just felt like a weird abrupt shift. I don't think it happens till like the second half of the book,
and it's very rare. Like it's not like it's like a constant perspective chapter. That definitely does continue as the series goes on. Maybe less so in some of the later books. It kind of sticks more with Alec and Sarah Jill, but I think that she really inhabits the voice of Alec and Sarah Jill very well in this series, and I don't necessarily think that she inhabits the voices of the other characters as well. As the series goes on and as she develops those characters more, she does inhabit their voices better. And I think that makes those sections feel less awkward.
Okay, that's good to know. Because, it does feel kind of like she's straddling in the middle of, like, strict perspective and a multi-perspective. Because, like, obviously, like, a George R. R. Martin, like, you have 50 whatevers, but, like, there's a steady rhythm to it. And in this one, or on the other side, there's, Farseer, where you have literally one and just sticking to it no matter what. Unless I think we get one Night Eyes perspective chapter in Farseer. Anyway, I think so, right? In the second one?
Yes, you do. Towards the very end, yeah.
It's been a while. Anyway, all I'm trying to say is it did feel like abrupt and sort of weird when that happened.
Yeah, I agree. And like I said, I definitely think it overall gets better. Like I said, there's definitely some rough edges in this one, but for a debut novel and for doing what it does, I really appreciated all that.
Yeah, and it's so much fun. Like I kind of half-assed like what I mean by that is like I didn't like sit down and read ever, but I read this in 3 days. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like
Oh yeah. Like I said, you can blitz through these books. They're fairly simply written. Like she's it definitely builds up an atmosphere, but she's not overly descriptive by any means. And yeah, they're definitely fairly quick reads.
yeah, and that's another huge plus, especially with like if you're reading a lot of books. Like I'm coming off of what was the last thing? Oh, War of the Flowers, which is Tad Williams' book. Actually, I guess you are too.
I'm still reading it.
You haven't gotten to the end yet?
No, I'm still like I've not even finished the first book.
Oh no, really?
Yeah.
Oh, Chris.
I know. I'm trash.
Anyway, that's like a really heavy, like intense reading experience. Like Ted
Mhm.
is a great writer, but he's also a pretty thick writer. So,
Yeah.
you know, like I really had to focus on that. This was like the exact opposite side
Oh
of
yeah.
to read.
These are like the ultimate escapist reads. So
Yeah.
like I'm filling out my Reddit fantasy bingo board. I don't know if you follow the Reddit fantasy bingo, Andy.
There's a bingo board.
Oh yeah, it's so much fun. But one of the squares is comfort read, and like one of these books is definitely going to be the comfort read.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you're allowed one reread. That's going to be mine. So yeah, overall positive feelings with some rough edges going forward, right?
Yeah. So I would. So my scale on my channel is I have like
Uh-huh.
a 5 spread scale, and I have best of all time, universal recommend, long endorsement, if you like X, and then just skip it.
hmm
This is going to straddle the line between a universal recommend and a long endorsement.
hmm
So both would be like categories where people like, yeah, you should buy it,
hmm
or you should read it. And I haven't honestly found where I want to put it there. I don't know if it's quite good enough for a universal, like just like anyone who reads this is gonna love it.
hmm
I can definitely see someone picking this up and just like honestly being like, yeah, it was fine, but it felt a little thin, and yeah, some of the stuff we talked about.
hmm
So I'm guessing it's gonna be long endorsement or long endorsement, but like I just like Alec and Sarah Gill and like the world so much that doesn't feel like it does it justice. So that's why it's kind of straddling that line.
hmm Yeah. I definitely think that as a series, you'll see what I mean. I think that that'll shift where you place it in your scale. I stick with the good old star rating, so this is like a solid 3.5, 4 for me.
Okay, so that's similar, I guess, if we're putting those side by side. And especially, I think the reason I kind of want to wait is like I'm committed to the second one, and I would want to read it anyway. And if, as you say, like it does get a little bit more crisp with like the plotting, then it's an easy like universal recommend because it's the first in a series that I think is really, really good. I think that's what's going to happen. And especially as you said, if this is like the worst book, or not the worst, I guess you didn't say that, but sort of the roughest book, I would say, like.
Yeah, I would say this is the roughest for me.
That's very exciting for me to hear.
Yes.
And Stalking Darkness should have arrived today, according to the post office. So
Yay.
But I probably won't read it till the end of the month.
Yeah, if you're looking for queer main characters, definitely read the series. Absolutely. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen gay, bisexual representation done better than in this series, which is not super explicit in this first book. And in fact, I think there was a pathway going forward in this first book where the Alec and Sarah Joel like could have remained friends. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's
and
interesting.
I like that they addressed a little bit what I was concerned of the fact that like he's like 60 or 80, whatever he is, and Alec is like 16 years old.
He's 40, I think.
Is it that young? I thought it was older than that.
I think he's old. I think he's only 40, if I remember correctly. Maybe I'd have to reread it. I might have missed that.
I think it's older. I could be wrong. I think it's like in his 80s because they said like he's lost friends, grow old, and whatever. Anyway, but like I was a little concerned. They do a little bit of work with like, oh yeah, at an Aaron Faye level, they're kind of like the same. But
yeah,
it's a little weird, but I think they do. I like that they like recognize that, like it's said out loud.
And I
think
they
also shows Sarah Gill like being sort of awkward about the relationship as well, which I like. Like he's not just like this experienced suave.
No, and Alec's old for his age.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like he's been through some things. Like,
yeah, I don't think it has an overall problem, but when I was reading, I was like, is this going to be kind of a weird thing? But they didn't, because they sort of like were honest with each other and were upfront. And yeah, I think it's interesting reading this book. I mean, I'm a straight man, so like reading it, I was really right when Becca was introduced and they had that chemistry, I was like, oh, this is the ship. And I was thinking about this myself. I was like, it's so interesting because like my sexual orientation, if I was Alec, that's where I would go. And so I think like my mind went that way, but like it's just an interesting study, I think, by people who read this and your own personal perspective, and you live through Alec, because there are so many as I said, so many possible relationships for him to have. Like if you're reading through Alec's eyes, which is kind of how I read, like, am I making sense? Like it's
yeah.
There's so, as you said, so many paths that he can take.
Yeah, like I said, I think there was a version of this book that could have gone a very different direction for Alec and Sergil. And in fact, someone got very angry on my channel and left me a very scathing comment because they were like, I read Luck in the Shadows and those two are just friends. You're a liar. And I was like, watch the video again. I was very clear that they're friends at the end of book 1. Chill. It's a very slow burn between.
And I think it's quite clear that there's a ton of something there. Like if you are purposefully not seeing that. If you didn't see that.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I mean, I'm making a lot of. Are you a Schitt's Creek fan?
I mean, I've never seen it. I mean, I've seen the memes, but that's it.
Great memes, also great show. There's a similar gay romance there where like it's sort of a slow burn. It happens over a whole season, but like the first, you just know there's something there like, from the first episode. And if you're not, I mean, honestly, if you don't see it, like you're just purposely trying not to look at, gay love. To be honest.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think that's exactly. I think some people are purposely blind to it. So some people do have a little problems with the age thing. I'll be interested to see how people's opinions either change or stay the same as it goes on. If people think that gets handled well, or if people think that wasn't handled well, we'll see. Because I personally didn't find it problematic when I read it, but I am maybe more willing to forgive than other people.
I think it would have been problematic if it happened in this book, because Alec is still like 16, I think, in this whole book.
And he's still such an apprentice.
As much as he is sort of good at stuff, and he's definitely like Sergil is more of a mentor figure. But even in this book, that shifts towards the end. I think especially after the first time they go out of the city and come back, it feels a little bit more like they're so like if it's a slow burn, like you said, I don't think I'll have a problem with it, but it was something I was nervous about at the beginning.
If it was going to be a queer as folk situation.
Yeah, and like like it was going to be like on the road back, they were going to start this relationship, and that felt a little weird to me, but they didn't, and so I think that's going to be better handled.
Yeah, but interested to see how people feel about that in the Discord as things move along in their relationship.
I'm so excited to go read the Discord because I've read it so
because you've not been able to look because we all been spoiling it in there.
Yeah, I've not been able to click on the black boxes of magic, and so I'm very excited to go back and see what everyone's doing.
Nice.
Which, by the way, what Discord we're talking about, probably everyone here knows, but my Discord channel, it's just Andy Smith Discord. You can just go on any of my videos, and underneath it'll be there.
When this ends up getting rendered and uploaded on my BookTube channel, which, by the way, this is counting for VEDA Day 8. I'm cheating. So I'll leave that in the description box.
Yeah, so come join us. Because it's got some great discussion. I guess I'm saying that blindly because I haven't seen the discussion, but
it's been good. I think a lot of people agreed with most of the sentiments that we had here about the plotting, but also really loved the characters.
Yeah. There's a lot of talk there, which is fun. So good threads on Discord are so much fun.
Yep. All right. I think that kind of gets my main things I wanted to talk about out of the way with this. If we wanted to kind of,
I'm trying to make. Oh no, there's one other thing I want to.
Okay, I'm ready.
This book, even how we've been talking about it here, the one thing that I was not prepared for is there is some serious horror imagery.
Yes, that's very true. And that gets amped up quite a bit.
There's a lot of darkness and like body horror. Like it's not like awful. Like I don't like Stephen King books, so it's not like I'm not a brave reader at all. Well, I've never read a Stephen King book, but that's because I'm a scaredy cat.
Me too.
So it's not like awful, but
and it's not like you spend a lot of time, because there's a lot of descriptions of like people's like dead bodies being desecrated and like the rib cages being torn open, all of the different stuff. It doesn't spend a ton of time on it. I think if it spent a lot of time describing it, it would be more difficult for me. But it's like you just know this kind of like horrific element is happening in the background with these Pluminarians.
Yep. So the things that stand out for me for sure are whenever it talks about an eye being in Sarah Gill's chest.
Oh god, yeah.
Freak me the fuck out. Like,
yeah, it's really gross. Oh yeah, you're fine.
Totally fine. Do now. I already did it.
Oh yeah. Beep. I'm just kidding. I'm totally fine with it.
So that freaked me out. The black figure that hovered on his vision, and then like
that scared me to death.
I literally how horrifying that was. Like creepy. Like I was reading it at night in my office and like was getting like a little.
It reminded me of the first time I encountered a Murderall in the Wheel of Time books. I was pretty horrified. And like the black figure watching. Definitely like similar vibes. So there's definitely elements of horror. And in fact, if this scares you, the Tamir Triad will terrify you. Just keep it real.
Cool. Okay. Well, it was in a good way. Like I thought.
Yeah.
Especially in a story that is so like full of like, as you say, like niceness and heart, it's especially jarring to have those horror moments. And I think she's probably going for that. And I think she nailed it. The last scene that I was going to mention is the final vision where like dead bodies are being thrown at him.
Oh god.
Eat them. And then it just like ends. So I don't know what the fuck's happening there, but all of those were very scary.
Yes. Yeah. She does a good job of like describing the gore and stuff without it being too much. She reminds me a little bit in like her descriptions of like this kind of body horror and her like willingness to like not flinch away from it of like J.V. Jones books, which also are quite unflinching when it comes to gore, but aren't necessarily like
Jones right now, right?
I'm not. I'm going to be.
What's the other author that you're reading, like the Tiger King or something like that?
I don't know. What are you talking about? The Tiger King? Are you talking about Kate Elliott?
Dragon? That's what I was thinking. Kate Elliott.
Yeah. But yeah, so like if you've read like J.V. Jones and you kind of like her willingness to kind of engage with the quite horrific things that happen in those books, like it's not grimdark, but it's definitely
Well, nasty. I remember. So again, because I'm a scaredy cat, J.V. Jones's Portal Fantasy that you read last year,
the Barbed Coil.
When you were reviewing it, I was like, "Oh, that sounds great," and then you mentioned the body horror stuff, and I was like,
"It's not."
Which is not like your bad. Like it's just like again, I'm a pretty wimp when it comes to that.
Yeah, it's not too bad. You could handle the Barbed Coil.
Which is funny. Like I'm the Malazan guy, right? Which is like gets pretty dark sometimes. I guess you don't know.
I don't know.
This is a subtle jab at you to get your ass. I'm kind of I'm a wimp when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you could handle it, and I think if you like J.V. Jones is probably worse than this in terms of unflinching, but I think that she reminded me in some of those descriptions of the gore a little bit of that kind of like overall, not necessarily the grimiest story ever, but definitely with the elements there that will send some chills.
All right, it'll train me for J.V. Jones in the future.
Yeah. All right, those are kind of my main points. I really enjoyed this first reread. I'm really looking forward to going to Stalking Darkness. I'm probably looking forward to Stalking Darkness more than more now, just knowing how much more focused and cleaner the story gets, and the ending. I remember I really loved the ending of Stalking Darkness. I'm not going to spoil anything, but I really thought it was a phenomenal ending. So, and what's really cool about this series, which I've mentioned before, is that if you read Luck in the Shadows and Stalking Darkness and you don't like it, it's a completely satisfying duology. Like you do not need the third book. Like you can totally read it as a standalone duology.
Well, and what I love about the Scala Along too is like it's not like it's a huge, like it sounds like a big commitment. I think you even said this in your video, like 7 or whatever. But these are so like
Oh
hot,
yeah,
quick books. Like it doesn't feel overbearing at
not
all.
at all. No,
Um,
no.
yeah, like I don't like, even though as we've been saying, like I liked it, didn't love it. Like I don't at all feel nervous about going on in the series, and I'm really excited, especially since you said like originally these might have been 2 whole books, because I really thought the ending, as I said, was lacking, and that makes a lot of sense. They're like, publishers like this is could be an ending, so I'm excited
Yep,
to read the second one now with that in mind.
yep, definitely. Cool. Well, I'm really excited. I'm glad people joined along. I think that there was a pretty good reception to the book on Discord and that people overall really enjoyed it. So that makes me very happy that I didn't overhype this thing. And yeah, any last words, Andy?
Hashtag Scala
Hashtag
along.
Skull along.
It's
Gotta join
not
along.
too, literally you can catch up with us
Oh
in
yeah.
videos.
If you missed month 1, you could totally bang both of these out in month 2. Easy
So
peasy.
so easily. And it is, I will say, okay, this is a good parting shot. Like I think I said this about Tad Williams as well in my video I released today, which talked about my TBR or wrap up for March. Like I can already tell that this is a series that I'm gonna read and be like, why don't more people talk about this? Because it's a really fun series. Like it already seems like it needs more exposure, I guess, than it has gotten. So I'm glad that you
Yeah.
did the whole hashtag Scala. Thank you for doing it, because I don't think I would have found it, or I would have found it because I watch you, but I don't think I would
Yeah.
have priority to read it. And I'm really glad I did.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you joined along for the discussion and are letting us use your Discord. So I don't have to make my own Discord because Discord scares me.
Yeah, I keep Chris away from trying to do too much technological things. That's my role in this YouTube friendship.
Yes, thank you. I'm really glad. I'm glad that people are excited for more Luck in the Shadows videos.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I think I don't know if I think we agreed on this. The Shadows Linger. No, not Shadows Linger. That's
Stalking Darkness.
Stalking Darkness. The discussion will be on my channel, I believe.
Yes, we're gonna go back and forth
At the end of April. So look for that, and we'll figure out a date when we get closer. We're pretty loosey goosey.
We are very loosey goosey.
I'm at work, so. Thanks everyone for joining us.
Yeah, thank you guys very much. I appreciated it, and thank you guys for joining along in the discussion on Discord as well. I'm really looking forward to next month. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Bye.